Here are 3 basic deck building videos that should give you some pretty good ideas. I'm going to try and do this one in less than 3 minutes, so let's go. Okay, here we have a deck, 2x6 planks, 8 foot by 8 foot with 4 concrete footings, and it is centered in the doorway. So you can center it in an opening. That's always nice to do. Move it over, but I'll leave that up to you. And then we have a 1 foot by 1 foot footing. This would be 1 foot wide in both directions, 1 foot deep. That's usually a common footing. You can make them a little smaller if you want. And we will form them all the way up, fill them with concrete, make sure that we have our standoff plate there, something to keep it off the concrete. Get rid of the forms after it dries. That was fast. Install our beams. And then our joists, and you can block this. I'm making this simple. I'm trying to make a simple video. If you don't block them, I've seen plenty of decks without blocks. It's not going to be a big deal. I've actually seen people just put a couple of blocks in the deck. So put one here, and one at the ends, kind of something like that to stabilize the deck. But after you nail the planking on, you should be pretty good. Wow, the planking's already nailed on. So hopefully I'm not too far into it here. And this is whatever planking you would choose. And let's go ahead, and if you are going to build a deck with this method here, you do not need to attach it to the building, which makes it a good thing. A lot of people put a ledger at the end here to save the work of putting a footing and a beam in here, and that's fine, but then you penetrate the building and you create a water leak problem or potential water leak. And again, here's an example of the beam with a standoff plate. They're usually 1 inch tall, but even if it was a 1/2 inch, that's fine. You could look underneath it and make sure no debris was collecting under there. Here's another example of a deck you can build. I don't know if I'll do the video in less than 3 minutes though, but hey, I'm probably going to get back to my old ways here. So this one has a concrete step. Just kind of throwing out a different idea. Has a rim on the front of it, and it's a little lower, and it's using concrete piers also instead of a footing. And a concrete pier, this is usually something you can get at a local lumber yard or home improvement center, and you can simply bury it in the ground and put the dirt back in there. Set your beam in there and put some joists in there. So we kind of got the same thing here going. The joist cantilevering back 1 inch away from the house to prevent any rot. And this one here, I have some nails in it. Kind of wanted to show you how it fastened together. Someone in the previous comment area for the video, the first video I made on decks, wanted to know how the nails, how the joists attach. So you can see here where the rim would get 3 nails going through the rim joist here, or fascia, whatever you want to call it, into the joist. And you can see here where there are angled nails. These are often referred to as toenails. And we have 2 on one side and 1 on the other side going into the wood. There's the 1. And I just wanted to give you another view. This is what it would look like without the beam. So you can see where you can really get a nice tie with these nails. And some people just put 1 on each side. I'll leave that up to you. It's not a big deal on something like this. Now this deck also has blocks in it. Blocks are always going to be a good thing. No midspan blocks. Someone suggested that you could put midspan blocks in these, and that would be something you could do fine. You could put as many rows of blocks in here as you feel that you need to, but keep in mind that some midspan blocks squeak. And you're probably thinking, how in the heck do they squeak? But I'll try and make a video on that in the future. And it's kind of like when the wood moves. On an 8-foot span like this, I mean, I would imagine the beam is no more than 7 foot of a span between the beams. If you put the blocks in, you might not have much movement at all. So the blocks will just make it a little stronger. and go ahead and throw the decking on there. You can see how the decking is nailed. Nails are usually within an inch. I say within an inch. I like to put mine about an inch, 3/4 of an inch to an inch away from the edge on 2x6. Another view of it there. And you can see here where the joist on the end is going to get the two toenails down, but it might not get the other nail. You angle it out and it's going to be sticking out past here, so that won't be a good thing. Let's go ahead and put our concrete step back in, and that is it for that deck. I'm going to go backwards real fast on it. See if I can drive you guys nuts. Check it out. I'll just go backwards. X-ray view there. Deck with the joists, beam, and the piers that would be buried in the ground. And I would imagine you're going to want to have these things sticking up at least 2 inches minimum. Building codes might require 6 inches, but building codes and I should say building departments might not even allow you to use piers. I'm just kind of throwing this out there. I've seen plenty of decks built with them, and they seem to be okay. In this video, I will try and explain why I would place the concrete footings where they had been placed in the previous videos, and hopefully give you a better understanding of locating them on your deck. So if we locate the building hardware, the base supports, at like we have here, and we put it in the center of the concrete foundation at the edge of the support beam, then we are going to be sticking out of the edge of the deck, and this could be a trip hazard, and of course it doesn't look good. This would probably provide us with the maximum strength for something like this, or I should say close to it, but it's not going to look attractive when we're done. So we are going to want to move them in if we can. Here's an example of what I'm talking about, and it was built this way, I believe, in the previous videos about basic deck building. And you can see here that the footings are not sticking out past the edge of the deck and are providing us with some pretty good support. Just kind of going around there. Now, one thing I would suggest doing, you don't have to, but you could always move the footing and put it up tight against the building foundation. You shouldn't have a problem with that. Now, you would have a problem with that if there's wood framing around here. If I was going to locate this, I would want it to be at least an inch away from the building. And of course, the inch could you could have a problem with that if debris accumulates. That's one of the biggest problems with decks, is the materials that accumulate underneath them. So keep that in mind when you're building your or locating your concrete footings for your deck. You can see here it's right up against it. So if this was a concrete foundation down here, we could put it up tight against that. Shouldn't be a problem. Now, where I have the beam located right now, it's about 4 inches away from the edge of the footing. So I think I moved this one 6 inches, but this is about 4 inches away from the edge here. So I could have moved this 4 inches and I would have been okay. Also, this would have been fine at 4 inches or 6 inches. I don't think you're going to get that much difference in structural support, but again, I don't have the capabilities of doing the math for that either. Here's an example of what it would look like if the footing was even with the edge of the beam. Now, don't forget that the beam here, it's not sitting directly on the concrete. There should be at least a 1/4 inch gap between the top of the concrete and the bottom of the beam to make sure that moisture is not absorbing from the footing into the beam also. Now, can you cantilever the beam? I would imagine you could. I think that something like this might weaken the deck, if you get a little carried away with it, you could follow the basic cantilever rules, which would be 1/3 the distance of the span points. And the span points on this would be from this area here to this area here. It would not be the length of the beam, so we don't want to get carried away with that either. If you have a 8-foot beam, which is what we have here, and we're in 4 inches, then I would imagine you would have to take the 4 inches off the 8-foot, which wouldn't be too big of a deal, but 2 foot would probably be about the maximum cantilever for something like this. Now, what about a double cantilever, something like this? And this would probably work fine, as long as, we're not getting a little carried away here. With something like this, could you locate the center of the base plates here? Could you locate them 1/3 the distance and have this stuff stick out 1/3? I don't know. I can't provide you with that information. But something like this, if it was to stick out 1 foot, I would imagine you'd be okay. Maybe 1.5 feet. Anything like that, you might be pushing the issue. And you might need to use bigger concrete footings. So what about putting a cantilever on it? We have this one sticking out this way, and of course this could apply to the back also. There's situations that create different problems. You might have plumbing clean out over here, or some type of a sprinkler system, a water main coming in with a shutoff valve that can't be moved. And if that's the case, you're going to have to get creative with your footing locations, and this is where this could help you out. So something like this, again, could you go with the 1/3 rule? Yeah, it could stick out 2 foot and go back. If it was an 8-footer, 1 foot for sure. If it's an 8-footer, I say that for sure. Again, that's something I hate to say because it depends on the deck. Remember, these are just simple decks, and trying to provide you with a simple explanation, not get too complicated here. So that is where I will stop this video. 2 inches up would be the minimum for the soil to the top of the concrete. And these are 12 inches by 12 inch, and then they're 12 inches deep. They go into the ground 12 inches. So if this was to be up 2 inches, then we would need to dig into the ground 12 inches, giving us a 14-inch footing height on overall, something like that. So anyway, I hope it helps. Any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment area. And this video was actually inspired by a question in one of the previous videos.